Now it's time to talk about the facility. You see, no matter how carefully food is handled, if the building is in disrepair or the equipment being used is broken, contamination can happen. And that's only the half of it. Pests can also be a big threat. To prevent this, there are a few things you need to know, like how to pick materials and equipment that are safe for use in food service operations, and how to install and maintain them. And since maintenance is key when it comes to the facility, you'll also want to know something about that. You may not be aware of this, but the utilities used by an operation can cause food safety hazards, so we'll need to take a closer look at them. Sometimes hazards to food occur due to emergencies that arise in the facility, like a sewage backup, so you need to know how to handle those. And finally, since pests are a big threat to food safety, you need to know how to prevent and control them. The materials, equipment, and utilities in your operation play a part in keeping food safe. Given the opportunity, you should choose items with food safety in mind. Remember, you may need to consult your local regulatory agency before making changes to your operation, including the facility or equipment. All right, let's start with the materials used for floors, walls, and ceilings. When choosing materials for floors, walls, and ceilings, you want to pick those that are smooth and durable. Any idea why? That's right. It's easier to clean floors, walls, and ceilings made of materials that are smooth and durable.
Once your new floors, walls, and ceilings have been installed, your job's not done. You have to maintain them. So replace missing or broken ceiling tiles and do the same for flooring. And if you find any holes in your walls, you need to repair them. Floors should have coving. Coving is a curved, sealed edge between the floor and a wall. It gets rid of sharp corners or gaps that are hard to clean. Coving should be glued tightly to the wall to get rid of hiding places for insects. This also protects the wall from moisture. Oh, and if you clean your floors by spraying or flushing them with water, make sure there's no standing water sitting around. If there is, remove it as quickly as possible.
Food service equipment must meet certain standards if it will come in contact with food. NSF International is an organization that creates these standards. NSF is accredited by the American National Standards Institute, or ANSI. NSF ANSI standards for food equipment require that it be non-absorbent, smooth, and corrosion resistant. It must also be easy to clean, durable, and resistant to damage. Now that you know what to look for when buying food equipment, there are some things you need to know about installing it. Whatever you do, you'll want to follow the manufacturer's recommendations. And don't forget to check in with your local regulatory authority to see what's required.
Stationary equipment should be easy to clean and easy to clean around. So, put floor-mounted equipment on legs at least 6 inches, 15 centimeters high. Or you can seal it to a masonry base, like we've done with this walk-in cooler. Tabletop equipment, like a soda machine, can also be sealed to the countertop, or it should be mounted on legs at least 4 inches, 10 centimeters high. Once you've installed your equipment, check it regularly to make sure it's working. And make sure it's maintained regularly by qualified people. You can usually set up a maintenance schedule with your supplier or manufacturer.
On to dishwashers. As you probably know, they vary by size, style, and sanitizing method. For example, some sanitize with very hot water, while others use a chemical solution. While we're on the subject, keep in mind that you can only use detergents and sanitizers approved by the local regulatory authority. There are several things to consider before selecting and installing a dishwasher. But before we go any further, remember that you should always follow the manufacturer's instructions when installing, operating, and maintaining dishwashers. Here's a question for you. When installing a dishwasher, what's important to consider? Nice job! A dishwasher must be installed so that it's reachable and conveniently located. And you also have to make sure that the way it's installed keeps utensils, equipment, and other food contact surfaces from becoming contaminated. Dishwashers should have the ability to measure important information that can affect food safety. Any idea what information should be measured by a dishwasher? Nice job! The dishwashers that you purchase should have the ability to measure water temperature and pressure. They should also be able to measure the concentration of cleaning and sanitizing chemicals. Keep in mind that information about the correct settings for each measurement should be posted on the machine. Last question. How often should you clean a dishwasher? You got it! You should clean a dishwasher as often as needed, following the manufacturer's recommendations and any local regulatory requirements. Dishwashers are not the only way to clean and sanitize items. 3-compartment sinks are another alternative.
Many operations use 3-compartment sinks to clean and sanitize items manually in the operation. Make sure you purchase sinks that are large enough to accommodate large equipment and utensils. You should also have other methods for cleaning these items, such as cleaning them in place.
Let's talk a little bit about hand washing stations. The big thing here is making sure that you put them in areas that make it easy for staff to wash their hands often. That said, hand washing stations are required in specific areas of your facility. Besides in restrooms or directly next to them, any idea where hand washing stations are required? Nice job! Hand washing stations are required in restrooms or directly next to them, and in food prep, service, and dishwashing areas.
Hand washing sinks must be used only for hand washing and not for any other purpose. And to prevent cross-contamination, make sure adequate barriers are present on hand washing sinks, or that there is an adequate distance between hand washing sinks and food contact surfaces so that water can't splash on these items. Make sure these stations work correctly and are well stocked and maintained. Hand washing stations must also be available at all times. That means they can't be blocked by portable equipment or stacked full of dirty kitchenware. There are some very specific requirements for a hand washing station. First, the sink must have hot and cold running water. That water must be drinkable and meet temperature and pressure requirements. The station should also have soap, either liquid, bar, or powder. And the hand washing station must provide a way to dry hands. That could be disposable paper towels or a continuous towel system that supplies the user with a clean towel. Hands can also be dried with a hand dryer using either warm air or room temperature air delivered at high velocity. Keep in mind that a garbage container is required if you're providing disposable paper towels to dry hands. Finally, you need to post a clearly visible sign or poster that tells staff to wash hands before returning to work.
An operation uses many utilities and building systems. That includes things like water, electricity, gas, sewage, and garbage disposal. Building systems include plumbing, lighting, and ventilation. There must be enough utilities to meet the needs of the operation. In addition, the utilities and systems must work correctly. If they don't, the risk of contamination is greater. Let's start by taking a closer look at water and plumbing. Any discussion about water is going to include the term potable, as in potable water. Any idea what potable water is? You got it! Potable water is water that's safe to drink. There are national standards for water in the United States that are enforced by each regulatory authority. One of these standards requires that only potable water be used to prepare food or come in contact with food contact surfaces. Potable water can come from many sources, like approved public water mains, private water sources that are regularly tested and maintained, closed portable water containers, and water transport vehicles. While we're on the subject of water, you should know how to prevent plumbing issues that can affect food safety. One of the most important things you can do is to have licensed plumbers work on the plumbing in your operation. You see, plumbing that's not installed correctly can allow potable water to be mixed with unsafe water. This can cause foodborne illness outbreaks. Not good.
The greatest challenge to water safety comes from cross connections. A cross connection is a physical link between safe water and dirty water, which can come from drains, sewers, or other wastewater sources. A cross connection is dangerous because it can let backflow occur. Backflow is the reverse flow of contaminants through a cross connection into a potable water supply. Backflow can be the result of pressure pushing contaminants back into the water supply. It can also happen when high water use in one area of an operation creates a vacuum in the plumbing system that sucks contaminants back into the water supply. This is called back siphonage. Okay, take a look at these two sinks. Which one can cause backflow? You're right. This sink is definitely at risk for backflow. Here's why. The hose, which is attached to the faucet and placed in the sink water, creates a cross connection. Dirty sink water could be sucked back into the water supply if back siphonage were to occur. The same thing can happen if you were to place a running hose into a mop bucket to fill it up.
So what's the best way to prevent backflow? Well, you can start by avoiding cross connections in the first place. There are other ways to prevent backflow. First, don't attach a hose to a faucet unless a backflow prevention device is attached, like a vacuum breaker. Vacuum breakers are mechanical devices that prevent back siphonage by closing a check valve and sealing the water supply line shut when water flow is stopped. There are other mechanical devices that can be used to prevent backflow, like double check valves and reduced pressure zone backflow preventers. The advantage of these devices is that they include more than one check valve for sealing off the water supply. They also provide a way to determine if the check valves are operational. Backflow prevention devices must be checked periodically to make sure they're working correctly. This must be done by a trained and certified technician, and the work must be documented. Always follow local requirements and manufacturer's recommendations.
Okay, take a look at these two sinks. Which one can cause backflow? Yep, this sink's drain pipe is connected directly to the floor drain. Wastewater could back up into the sink, contaminating it. Let me show you how to prevent that. The only sure way to prevent backflow is to create an air gap. An air gap is an airspace that separates a water outlet from a potentially contaminated source. A sink that is correctly designed and installed usually has two air gaps. One is between the faucet and the flood rim of the sink. The other is between the drain pipe of the sink and the floor drain of the operation.
There are only a couple more things we need to talk about regarding plumbing: grease traps and septic systems. Here's a question for you. What's the purpose of a grease trap? You got it. A buildup of grease in pipes is a common problem in plumbing systems. So grease traps are often installed to prevent a grease buildup from blocking the drain. If used, grease traps should be installed by a licensed plumber and be easy to access. Also, make sure they're cleaned regularly, following the manufacturer's recommendations. Any idea what can happen if a grease trap is not cleaned regularly? Yes, odors can occur if grease traps are not cleaned regularly. But worse, dirty water can back up and contaminate the facility. Now, if your facility has an on-site septic system, there are also a few requirements. First, septic systems need to be properly tested to make sure they're working correctly. And like everything else in your facility, they must be maintained to avoid problems. Good lighting makes it easier to clean things in your operation. It also provides a safer environment.
Lighting intensity, how bright the lights are in the operation, is usually measured in units called foot candles or lux. Different areas of the facility have different lighting intensity requirements. Local jurisdiction usually require prep areas to be brighter than other areas. This allows staff to recognize the condition of food and identify items that need cleaning. Once the appropriate level of lighting has been installed in each area of the facility, you must monitor it. Replace any bulbs that have burned out, and make sure bulbs are the correct size. All lights should have shatter-resistant light bulbs or protective covers. These products prevent broken glass from contaminating food or food contact surfaces.
Okay, enough about lighting. Let's talk about ventilation for a minute. Ventilation improves the air inside an operation by removing heat, steam, and smoke from cooking lines. It also eliminates fumes and odors. Here's a question for you. You notice that grease and condensation are starting to build up on the walls and ceiling. What's the problem? That's right. If ventilation systems aren't working correctly, grease and condensation will build up on walls and ceilings. Any idea how you can prevent grease from building up on walls and ceilings? You got it! To prevent grease and condensation from building up, you need to have the ventilation system cleaned and maintained according to the manufacturer's recommendations. On to garbage. It can attract pests and contaminate food, equipment, and utensils if not handled correctly. The good news is that there are several things you can do to prevent this.
When it comes to prep areas, garbage should be removed as quickly as possible to prevent odors, pests, and possible contamination. But staff must be careful when removing garbage so they don't contaminate food or food contact surfaces. Keeping containers clean is an important way to prevent contamination. It will also reduce odors and pests. So clean the inside and outside of garbage containers frequently, but don't do it near food prep or food storage areas. Containers must be leak-proof, waterproof, and pest-proof. They also should be easy to clean. And make sure containers are covered when not in use. While we're on the subject, keep in mind that women's restrooms must include a covered receptacle for sanitary napkins. Waste and recyclables must be stored separately from food and food contact surfaces. The storage of these items must not create a nuisance or public health hazard. Outdoor garbage containers have their own set of requirements. Place them on a surface that's smooth, durable, and non-absorbent. Asphalt and concrete are good choices. Make sure outdoor containers have tight-fitting lids and are kept covered at all times. And keep their drain plugs in place.
It goes without saying that regular maintenance in a facility is very important. That's because poor maintenance can cause food safety problems in your operation. There are several things you should do to maintain your facility. That includes things like cleaning the operation on a regular basis, making sure all building systems work and are checked regularly, making sure the building is sound by ensuring there are no leaks, holes, or cracks in the floors, foundation, ceilings, or windows, controlling pests, and maintaining the outside of the building correctly, including patios and parking lots. Certain crises can affect the safety of the food you serve. Some of the most common include electrical power outages, fire, flooding, and sewage backups. These are considered by the local regulatory authority to be imminent health hazards. Any idea what an imminent health hazard is? Yep, an imminent health hazard is a significant threat or danger to health. It requires immediate correction or closure to prevent injury. Other threats should also be considered, like power failures and refrigeration breakdowns, which can threaten your ability to control the temperature of TCS food. This can result in the growth of pathogens. Unauthorized people inside a facility are a risk to food safety. This is especially true when they can access storage and processing areas. Also, acts of nature can weaken a facility's security, such as heavy storms. Threats to the drinkable water supply must also be considered. Broken water mains and breakdowns at water treatment facilities are a risk to the safety of food. Terrorist contamination of the water supply could also be a threat. When faced with any of these crises, you must first determine if there is a significant risk to the safety or security of your food. If the risk is significant, service must be stopped. Then, the local regulatory authority must be notified. Spoiled or contaminated food must be thrown out, along with food and packaging that is not intact. Finally, you must decide how to correct the problem. Correcting these problems could include establishing time-temperature control of TCS food, cleaning and sanitizing surfaces in the operation, reestablishing the physical security of the operation, and verifying that the water supply is drinkable. Regardless of how the problem is corrected, you'll need approval from the local regulatory authority before continuing service. But here's something to keep in mind. They may allow you to continue operating in the event of a water or electrical interruption. To do this, however, there are certain conditions that you'll have to meet. The first is having a written emergency operating plan that has been approved in advance by the regulatory authority. You'll also have to make sure that you're taking immediate corrective action to prevent, eliminate, or control any food safety risks or imminent health hazards associated with the interruption. And finally, the regulatory authority has to be informed anytime you implement your emergency operating plan. Rodents, insects, and other pests are more than just unsightly to customers. They can damage food, supplies, and facilities. But the greatest danger comes from their ability to spread diseases, including foodborne illnesses. So prevention is critical in pest control. To keep your operation pest-free, you need to follow 3 basic rules. 1. Deny pests access to the operation. 2. Deny pests food, water, and shelter. And 3. Work with a licensed pest control operator, PCO. Since your biggest job when it comes to pests is preventing them from getting into and staying in your operation, it's time to see what you know about pest prevention. We're going to show you several photos. Your job is to decide if what you see in each photo can prevent pests. Ready?
Take a look at this photo. Can this prevent pests? Yes, it can. You can deny pest shelter by throwing out garbage quickly and correctly, and by keeping containers in good condition and clean. So wash them regularly. How about this? Sure can. To keep out pests, you always want to clean up spills around garbage containers. Same goes for food and beverage spills, including crumbs and scraps. Careful cleaning eliminates pests' food supply and destroys insect eggs. It also reduces the places pests can take shelter. Here's another. Yep, keeping outdoor containers tightly closed can prevent pests. So can placing them on a surface that's smooth, durable, and non-absorbent. Asphalt and concrete are good choices. Oh, and make sure to keep the drain plug in place. Try this one. Right you are. Recyclables should be stored in clean, pest-proof containers. And they should be kept as far away from your building as local regulations allow. Last one. Good job. Food and supplies should be kept away from walls and at least 6 inches, 15 centimeters off the floor. Store them quickly and don't forget about FIFO, so pests don't have time to settle and breed.
Pests can be brought inside with deliveries or through building openings if you're not careful. But there are some things you can do to prevent it. Check all deliveries before they enter your operation, and refuse shipments if you find pests or signs of pests in them. This includes egg cases and body parts, legs, wings, etc. Make sure all of the points where pests can access the building are secure. Screen all windows and vents and patch or replace them when needed. Seal cracks in floors and walls and around pipes. Install self-closing doors and air curtains, also called air doors or fly fans, above or alongside doors. Even after you've made every effort to keep pests out, they may still get into your operation. If this happens, you must work with a PCO to get them under control. Even if you only spot a few pests, they may actually be present in large numbers. This is an infestation and can be very difficult to eliminate. Pests leave signs, letting you know they're there. Look for live or dead insects or rodents, feces, nests, and damage on products, packaging, and the facility itself. Contact your PCO immediately if you see these or any other pest-related problems, so that control measures can be taken. And by the way, poisonous or toxic pest control materials should only be applied by a certified applicator. Nice job. All that's left to do is answer a few multiple choice questions, and you're all finished.
What are the most important food safety features to look for when selecting flooring, wall, and ceiling materials? That's right. You want materials for flooring, walls, and ceilings to be smooth and durable. This makes cleaning easier. When installing tabletop equipment on legs, the space between the base of the equipment and the tabletop must be at least what? Four inches? Yep, you got it. Nice job. What is the most likely cause of a buildup of grease and condensation on the walls and ceiling? Yes, a buildup of grease and condensation on walls and ceilings is an indication that the ventilation system is not working properly. A hand washing station should have a garbage container, hot and cold water, signage, a way to dry hands, and what else? Yes, that's right. A hand washing station must have soap, either liquid, bar, or powder. What's the only completely reliable method for preventing backflow? Nice job! An air gap is the only completely reliable method for preventing backflow. What's wrong with a dumpster placed on a gravel driveway with the lids closed and the drain plug in place? That's right. Outdoor containers should be placed on a surface that's smooth, durable, and non-absorbent. Asphalt and concrete are good choices. A broken water main has caused the water in the operation to appear brown. What should you do? Yes, broken water mains can be a significant risk to the safety of food, so you need to contact the local regulatory authority. What is the best way to eliminate pests that have entered the operation? Yes, this is the safest way to eliminate pests in the operation.